Okay, good evening, everybody. We are learning Mesilas Yesharim, our path to become close to Hashem, finding our own path. We're in the chapter 19, Yutes Chassidus. The elements of Chassidus, Chelke Chassidus. Very long chapter, but Baruch Hashem, we are coming towards the end of it. And the section that we're going to be dealing with tonight is love of Hashem. Now, of course, we say in the Shema every day, V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. There's a mitzvah d'oraisa. One of the most basic mitzvahs is to love Hashem. But it's a very difficult thing to do, to love a being who is incorporeal. You've never met him. So part of loving Hashem, of course, is on the kind of the basic level. But we're talking about a higher level. But to get to that higher level, you have to get to the basic level. Basically, the love of Hashem that we're talking about now, the love of Hashem, the chosid, again, the chosid doesn't mean somebody who has a fur hat. It's talking about somebody who's gone beyond the letter of the law. Lifnim mishur sadin. We said it many times, but it has to be remembered. The half of this book is talking about tzidkus, a tzedek, which is basically somebody who does everything that it says in the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch. And of course, by that definition, that's already a major achievement, just to be able to do that. There's a level above that, which is called Chasidus, which basically is not for most people. And we've said many times before, so pretty much nobody's ever going to get there. Why learn about it? So my Rebbe once said two answers. The first answer is that the mere understanding that such levels exist and learning about them makes a person a different person. The mere knowledge of such an existence itself makes you a higher person. You may never get to those levels in actuality, but to have had a grasp that something like that exists beyond you, above you, is in itself an aliyah, brings you to a higher level. It doesn't bring you to the level of Chassidus, but it brings you in a certain way higher than you would have been without learning about it. That's reason number one. And reason number two, we'll say it again, we've said it many times, but I think it's important. Number two is that it's true, most of us will never able to achieve the level of Chassidus. But that doesn't mean for a split second maybe, that you'll be able to, at one point, some point in your life, be able to achieve that level. And it will have been worth learning all about what that's all about in order to understand that that's what you could attain at this particular moment in your life, or you did attain it. So for those two reasons, it's worth it. We're talking about now the love of Hashem. Love of Hashem on the level of the chassid. The love of Hashem on the level of a chassid is, as we said, when the mere mention of Hashem's name brings a person to a feeling of, like a warm feeling spreads inside him. It's like he brings the pasuk about Ephraim. He says the mere mention that Hashem, so to speak, where does it say here? Just lost it, give me a second. Yeah. Yeah, as the English translation, is Ephraim my favorite son or a delightful child, that whenever I speak of him, I mention him more and more. Ki midei dabri boy zochar eskarenu od. The mere mention wants me to, I want to talk about Hashem. It's like a person who has somebody who's very fond of, or like he has a Rebbe, or his father, or his brother, or his sister, or somebody in his family that he just has so much admiration for. The mere mention of that person's name kind of makes him feel happy, makes him feel warm inside. And he said, you know what Yankee did? I want to tell you, Yankee's such a great guy. I want to tell you what he did. You know what he did yesterday? You want to talk about him. So that's the feeling that when somebody mentions Hashem, this is a very high level. I don't know how many of us, walk around wanting to speak about Hashem, how great Hashem is. As I say, it's very difficult because Hashem, a lot of the time, for most of us, is very remote. So how do we get to this level of loving Hashem and having this feeling? Okay. So he brings several examples of psukim, which I'm not going to go through all of them, but we'll see a couple of them. I'm going to start, first of all, where it says, Hinei zos hi amida hanechmedis asher aleh zochol chasidim harishonim kadoshei elyon. This for sure is the cherished trait of the early Hasidim. Again, the Hasidim we're talking about, the Hasidim in the times of the Gemara, Chazal, that they exalted holy ones who they were zoicha. People actually got to this level, and of course amongst them would be David HaMelech. Kamama David HaMelech Olav Shalom, as David HaMelech Olav Shalom he said in Tehillim, famous posik, Ka'ayal tarog alafike mayim kein nafshi sarog alecha elokim. As a deer calls out longingly, like the voice of a deer that calls out longingly for the brooks of water, so my soul calls out longingly to you, Hashem. That's that level of, as we say, of this tremendous yearning. Another posik is Tzama Nafshi. So then it carries on. Tzama Nafshi lo lokim lekel chai mosai avoy. My soul thirsts for you, Hashem, for the living God. When will I come? And the end of the posik is, when will I come and appear before you, Hashem? I long to be close to you, Hashem. Nich, another posik. Nich sefa v'gam kolsa nafshi. My soul yearns, indeed it pines for the courtyards of Chatzros Hashem, for the courtyards of Hashem. Or many psukim with these same ideas that came from this intense longing that David HaMelech had, and of course all the Tehillim were expressions of this, most of them. And David, of course, was the Naim Zemirot Israel. He was the sweet singer of Israel. He was connected with music and that expression, the deep expression of music, which expresses this longing of the soul to be close to Hashem. Also, Yeshaya said, the mere name and your mention is the yearning of the soul. Same idea. And it says also, Nashi ivisicha v'layla avruchi bekirbi ashacharecha. And the next verse says, my soul desired you during the night. The night, Davka in the night, as long as my spirit is within me, I seek you out. The night is a time when things are quieter, when the troubles, not even the troubles, like the how do you say, the busyness of the day, a person's running around all day, taking care of what he needs to take care of, and he doesn't really get time to think about Hashem. He spends most of his time thinking about, getting to where he needs to get to on time, where he's going to be for lunch, whatever, and has he take care to look at his, make sure his banking is not open, he's got in the red in his bank account. Whatever he has to do, his life is full of things which don't allow a person. But at night time, when in the silence of the night, when the tumultuous preoccupations of the day fade away, they recede, and then that's when the soul of the Navi, when that's revealed what's really important to you. Again, I have to say this all the time, we're talking about people on a very, very high level. We're learning about this level to know that it exists. I mean, don't go away and think, wow, let's just, forget about it. This is something so above me. I'm having difficulty getting up for davening in the morning or I'm even having difficulty keeping kosher or keeping Shabbos, whatever level a person's on. And to think about this sort of, whenever I lie down at night, my body and my soul and my mind is filled with thoughts of Hashem and longing to be close to Hashem. That's not something that happens too often. But the fact that you know about it, and it's possible, it's out there somewhere, that in itself is something which I think, makes a person much, much closer. It's very important to stress this because sometimes when I'm talking for myself, learning all these levels of Hasidus, it's very easy to think, well, okay, we'll stop the book here. Let's go back to the beginning because this is just like above my pay grade. This is not for me. So that's not true. Inside every Jew, there's a thing called the Pintaliyid, a little Jewish spark. Maybe we'll talk about this when we come to Hanukkah. That's the little candle that goes on glowing in the darkest night. That's the little pach of oil, the flask of oil which all the Greeks of this world can never reach. There's a pure spark in every Jew that is beyond, can never be reached by all the Greeks of this world, by all the secularity of this world, by all the tivers of this world, all the desires of this world, all the blare of the media and all the distractions, that our cell phones bring us, as I call them, weapons of mass distraction. All of that, beneath all of that, there is this pure spark, and that's what longs to be close to Hashem. We said back at the beginning of Mesilas Yesharim, the attraction of the neshama to Hashem is like the magnet to the piece of, I don't know what what's called the piece of metal that's attached to the magnet. I don't know if it has a special name. Every magnet, I remember we used to buy magnets, the red bit, right? And then there's the thing underneath. Hashem is the magnet. He's the biggest magnet that exists. So basically, the attraction, I don't have to seek Hashem. Hashem is basically, inside me, is this little piece of metal called the neshama, which is being drawn with tremendous power towards Hashem. Why don't I get there? Because in between that me and that magnet is a lot of shtuyot, a lot of rubbish, a lot of padding, a lot of secularity, a lot of wrong ideas, a lot of fears, a lot of depression, a lot of things which stop me getting close to Hashem. But at the end of the day, I don't have to create that in me. That's the point I'm getting to. It already exists. All I have to do is to remove all of those many, many layers very often in all of us of obstruction which stop my soul being inexorably drawn back to the source. It's not something I really have to do to, to ignite that. That is something which is natural, inherent to every Jew. That Pintaliyad yearns, like he's saying, like a heart, like a deer, yearns for water, calls out longingly. We don't hear that voice much of the time, because that voice is very often, that voice is very often, it's most of the time obscured like this. The voice is calling out, but we don't hear it inside us because of all of the entrapment. And of course, how do we get through that? By learning Torah. Torah is the thing that strips away all those, it's not going to happen overnight, but a lifetime of learning Torah brings a person for sure very close to these levels if he's learning the right way. And of course, every mitzvah that you do, a mitzvah is a candle, and the Torah is the ore, is the light itself. So again, this is a very high exalted level, that feeling of love and excitement whenever you hear Hashem's name, and that's something, but it's possible. And we say, that's in the night, Davka, when things are a little bit stiller, and the great machine that's going on in the world, which is churning out its messages of consumption and physical desire, and go for it and grab it, and money and more pleasure and more pleasure, and you just have to open up a newspaper, which of course it's all the same stuff. They just change the names. I mean, it's all the same that's going on every day. The same people doing the same aveiras, the same people ripping people off, the same people being immoral. They just change the names. And all of that is basically clouding our connection with Hashem. And the night when that vast machine quietens down a bit, and it's quiet and we're alone and we lie on our bed, rigzuv al techatoch, we lie on our bed, and then we have a chance to connect to that voice inside us, to connect to that desire, that pintaliyid. As it says, im zachatani al yitzuoi bashmuros eger boch. It's my desire, sated with fat and abundance that's the beginning of the pasuk. It says, I remember you, Hashem, upon my couch. In night watches I meditate upon you. David is describing here the oineg, the pleasure, shashu, and the dearness, the delight, shayalo, bedabro boy, when speaking about Hashem, uvishvachov, and his praises that he experiences when talking about Hashem and his praises. For Oima, and David also said further regarding, as we said before, talking about learning Torah, ve'esh ta'asha b'mitzvosecha asher ahavti. I will delight in your commandments that I love. Okay, now, so this genuine love of Hashem comes with an important stipulation. V'hi zos vadei she'ahava zos tzorich shelo siyeh Ava tluya bedova. This has to be something which doesn't come. The Chazal teaches kol ava shetluya bedova. Any love which is dependent on some external thing. When the thing goes, the love goes. If you love your wife because she's young and pretty, when she becomes less young and maybe less pretty, so the love will go. If you love your husband because he's rich and famous, if one day he becomes very unfamous and very unrich, there'll be no love. Love, true love is the reason you love somebody is because you love them. The cause and effect is the same. It's not because of any reason. It's no outside factor. You love them because you love them. And this is why I think we mentioned this when Avram Avinu appears on the scene in Parshas Lech Lecha. It doesn't say anything about Abraham's, virtues. By Noach, it says that Noach haya ish tzaddik b'dorosov. He was a tzaddik, and for these reasons that Hashem chose him. The choice of Avram Avinu was not a choice which depended on anything at all. It was an ahava shelo tluya bedova, a love which had no reason, which didn't depend on any outside reason. The love was itself. The love was the love. The cause and the effect were one and the same. And that, of course, is the love that we're talking about now. It can't depend on any outside factor. It's not because Hashem does good to me and makes me wealthy, so he makes me successful. Rather, it's like the love, avas aben la'ovid, like the love that a son has for his father. You love your father because he's your father. Why do I love him? Because I love him. It's not because it may be that he does lots. No, this is an important thing to understand, because the Ramchal understands that the Torah calls Hashem our Father not in just some poetic fashion. It's because the relation of a father to a son is exactly this relationship, that the son feels about his father and the father feels about the son, a love which is not dependent on any outside thing. It's not talui by anything. In other words, we're created naturally to love Hashem. And as I said, giving the mashal, the parable of the magnet is exactly what we're talking about here. So, as that's what we're saying, she'avas tevim mamash she'tiv oy. It's a natural love which is part of the nature of a person. Machrichoy v'kofehu. It's a love which propels him, and it, so to speak, compels him to love Hashem by virtue of the fact of this relationship, just because he's my father, not because he did anything or he's good to me, or Kamama HaKosav says, "Halo hu avicha konecha." He is your father. He's your master. So this is really the test. This test of whether the love is unconditional is what happens when things get tough, when the going gets tough. V'chein omru, Zichron Levracha, that's what Chazal said in Brochas, when it says, "V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha." You should love Hashem with all your heart and with all your soul, and kol me'odecha. And Chazal teaches, "Afil notel es nafshecha," with all your soul. B'chol nafshecha means that even Hashem takes your life away. Even if a person, obviously we're talking about before he's actually dead. Even if a person is beset by life-threatening suffering, he still has to, if he still has this love for Hashem. Now, why should you have this love for Hashem? Clearly, if the love is depending on things going well, so that's a very superficial kind of love. That's not really a love. It's a love in a very, conditional sense. So even if you're person, even if you are in a life-threatening situation, v'chol ma'odecha, and even if Hashem, your resources, meaning that even Hashem causes you to lose all of your wealth, nevertheless, if you still love Hashem after all that, that is a proof of the true love that you have for Hashem. But Omnam kadei shelo siyena hatzores hadchokim koshi umania es ava yesh laodem lachoshiv al atzmo shtei teshuvos. The question is, of course, given that things sometimes do get very tough in a person's life, and you see people they question Hashem. Why are you doing this to me? Unfortunately, you see people, and I understand exactly why they might feel like this. Somebody who came through the Holocaust or had parents who came through the Holocaust. That's very, very difficult. How can I see Hashem's love in such a situation? So, of course, it's important. In other words, let's go into that. He says there are two things here. There are two things that a person has to remember in order to be able to achieve this love, which is lo tlui b'dova, which is not dependent on the outside factor. The first of these applies to everybody. And the second is for wise people who have a deeper grasp of the way things are. So let's start with the first one. The first one is Kolma David min Hashamaya Latav. The Gemara in Brocha says that the person has to inculcate in himself the idea that everything that Hashem does is for the good. Not often we see this. Even though things look bad in your eyes, nevertheless, it is really good. In the end, it's going to be good. Or right now, it's good, I just can't see it. V'chishmal haroife hachoitech es habasor o es ha'eva shenifsod kadei sheyavriya shah haguf v'lo yomus. He uses the mashal here, the parable of a surgeon. A surgeon does something ostensibly very cruel. He cuts off somebody's, God forbid, leg. But when the person realizes that if the surgeon hadn't operated on his leg, he would have died of gangrene. So rather than hating the surgeon, he's extremely grateful to him for saving his life. So when, of course, it's only a mashal, it goes as far, the mashal's as good as it is good to go to illustrate the nimshal, the lesson we're trying to take from it. But the lesson is that everything that Hashem does, Kol man da'ovid rachman l'tavahu da'osid ovid. Everything Hashem does is for the good. That's the first thing that a person has to put into his mind. And of course, again, like anything, he has to inculcate this. This is something that a person has to meditate on, to make part of his thinking, part of his Weltanschauung, his worldview. It starts intellectually, and you return it to your heart. You make it part of your emotional landscape. Everything Hashem does is for the good. I understand that. Why? Because intellectually I know that Hashem created this world for one reason and only, which is to do good. And to do good, and to do good specifically to me. So if Hashem created, the whole reason for the creation is to do good, it must be intellectually that what's happening now is good. I may not see it, but it's good. Again, that's an intellectual idea, but it has to be inculcated, brought into the heart, and made part of the heart's furniture, so that it becomes part of the way your approach to the world. It doesn't happen overnight. And so I'm going to skip a little bit here. So when a person, when a person internalizes this, as I said, it has to be internalized. It's not going to come immediately. Because of course, the surface of things looks the opposite. It's and it's difficult to look past the surface, but that's really what all Judaism is about, is looking past the surface of things. So the avoda is to internalize, to inculcate in ourselves that everything that Hashem does is for the good, because the whole reason the world was here in the first place is to do good. Therefore, it's impossible to say that anything that Hashem does isn't aligned in some way with His original purpose, His original intention. And of course, whether that's something to do with whether the ben mamona, whether it's his money, or his goof, or his body. Even though he doesn't see this, even though he doesn't understand how this can possibly be good for him, nevertheless, vadai tovasahu, it's surely for his benefit. He's not going to, if he really manages to internalize this, whatever happens to him, it's not going to weaken in his love for Hashem, or because of kol tsar, or any pain, or any trouble. Ela adarabba, tigba v'nosfa boy tomid. Rather, to the contrary, it will intensify and increase within him continuously. When a person does succeed in doing this, and internalizing this truth within him, this has the effect very much like when you work on a muscle which is weak, and you build it up. So in the end, it actually becomes stronger as the result of the resistance against it. The thought of being faced with this challenge of emunah, being faced with this challenge of not seeing why is Hashem doing this, and reinforcing the idea this is all for the good, that makes a person grow tremendously spiritually. Now, this is, of course, is completely true, but there's a certain level way above this, which is another line of reasoning completely, which is people who are on a true level of deep knowledge, I said before, they don't even need this way of looking at things. They don't have to be, in other words, because if you think about it, this to a certain extent is still somewhat selfishly motivated. In other words, it looks like this isn't good for who? For me. But really, if I realize this is really still good, it really is good, even though it doesn't look good, for who? For me. At the end of the day, this is really something which is selfish. There are people who are on a level where it doesn't even occur to them that whether it's good for them or not. They look at it as a chance, by being able to go through these difficult times, to be Makadesh Shem Shemayim, by standing up to these things. I'm not thinking if it's good or not good for me. I am going to demonstrate my faith in Hashem in these difficult times, and as a result of that, that's going to be called Kiddush Shem Shemayim. I'm going to sanctify Hashem's name by my attitude, by my reaction, by my complete trust and faith in Hashem. I'm not thinking about whether it's going to be good in the end or not. That doesn't bother me. I'm above that. Now, of course, it's true. It's not to say that they don't believe the first level is true. It's just not something that motivates them. They don't need that level of motivation to make sure that they understand that even the bad stuff is really good for who? For them. That doesn't concern them. It's true, and they would accept that. It's not that they disagree with that first principle. It's this, they're not flying. They're flying way above that. They're flying on the level, and says that let's read this now. They have no interest in whether it's good or not for them at all. Rather, all of their prayer to Hashem is kavod shem yisborach, to increase the kavod of Hashem, lasos nachas ruach lefonov, and to give Hashem satisfaction. To give Hashem the satisfaction of showing their trust in Him. That's their intention. Again, this is what we have to say this every 5 minutes. This is for people on a very, very high level. But again, let's learn it. Let's be affected by it. Let's be influenced by the mere knowledge of it. Gabru akuvim negdam, and the greater those things that press in and confront them and oppress them. So ad shitztarchu aim yoser koyach la'aviram, to the point that they now need additional strength to eliminate them. So hu ya'ametz libam v'yismachu la'aros tokef amunosam. Their hearts are going to be bolstered with resolve, and they will rejoice in this opportunity to demonstrate the intensity of their emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kasa tzava harashum begvura, like a famous army commander who asher yivcha lo tomid b'milchama hazaka who will always try and find the toughest battle to fight in order to demonstrate his prowess through his triumph. Of course, it's a marshal, but the idea is, I want to be Hashem. Of course, you should never daven for tzoros to happen. Person should never say, Hashem put me in a situation of test, because who knows? But if you find yourself in that situation of test, a person should rejoice at the ability to be able to rise up and to demonstrate his trust and his faith in Hashem, and to give Hashem this nachas. He regales, he has a simcha of saying, wow, Hashem is putting him in this test, I'm going to rise to this test, and that's going to be a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. We're going to finish off just now in a couple of minutes. That it's commonplace with everybody who understands, as we said before, any love between two human beings. A person rejoices. When a person has the ability to demonstrate his love for his partner, for the other person, or be it his wife or his family, to the extent how far that love goes. So the greater the challenge, the greater his opportunity to demonstrate how great his love is. And therefore, that this manifestation of love and the determination to persevere in the face of all hardships and obstacles, that can only be expected from somebody who genuinely loves Hashem. And to finish off, so really this is connected to next week. We will just say it. Hadvekus, Hasimcha, Vahakina. And now, having given this preface, we're going to go into the three branches of this idea. The first is Dvekus. Dvekut, there's a word in modern Hebrew called devek, which means glue. So Dvekut means attachment to Hashem. The second is Simcha, which is joy, which is the happiness, which is an expression of Avas Hashem. And the third expression of Avas Hashem is Kina, which in Hebrew has two translations. One is jealousy, and the other is zealotry. Actually, they're quite similar in English. They're just a couple of different. In English, there are two different words. The Kina he means here is zealotry, meaning that a person is zealous to protect the name of Hashem, to protect the honor of Hashem, and will go out of his way to protect Hashem's honor, so to speak, in the eyes of human beings. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Bezrat Hashem, we'll carry on. It's Chanukah next week. Will there be a Shia next week? I'm not so sure. Probably people will be busy eating donuts, so we'll probably have to leave it to the week after. Okay.